CES Capital Quest last May when we brought 18 relatively new extension directors and administrators to Washington, D.C. to unravel the mysteries of Washington, D.C. We realized that there was an opportunity to really try to better help our folks understand extension nationally and try to give you a sense of how we operate and where you can plug into this really important conversation that we're having about how do we move extension forward in the United States. My name is Chuck Hibbard. I serve as chair of ECOP, and I'm really pleased that we have Ed Jones with us, ECOP chair-elect, starting in October, and then Mark Lattimore, who is ECOP chair-elect, starting in 2020. We've really focused this year on leadership succession and being ready for the coming agenda that we have set out in front of us. So our webinar today is Unraveling the Mysteries of ECOP and the Cooperative Extension section. We're looking forward to sharing with you some of our thoughts. We would encourage you, if you have questions or comments as we go along, we'll pause every now and then for you to speak up. And also, if you've used Zoom before, you know there's a chat. And we would encourage you also, if you have a question you would like to pose in the chat, that would be fine as well. I see we have a number of new or relatively new extension directors and administrators with us. Dr. Lardy from North Dakota State University serving as interim there. So welcome, Greg. We're glad you're on board, and everyone else that's with us today. So Angie, let's go to the next slide. So as we think about cooperative extension, there's really kind of three levels. First of all, we think about the system, which is like everybody, right? We have over 15,000 extension professionals in our land-grant university-based cooperative extension system, serving 3,067 counties, parishes, and boroughs across the United States. We'll give you a quiz on where the boroughs are here in just a little bit. Then we think about a slightly more refined group, and this is the 76 extension directors and administrators, and that's what we call the cooperative extension section. And you'll understand that better here in a little bit when you see an org chart. Yep, there's a dreaded org chart, sure enough. So next, Sandy. So then we come to the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy, or ECOP. And simply a 15-member board representing the 5 regions that we have in cooperative extension across the country. And next. And so what we're going to do is talk about what and why around these 3 levels of extension. Next slide. So a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to lead a conversation about what does it mean to be a national system or a national network? And are we really, is cooperative extension really a national system or a national network? And when we talk about that, what does that really mean? And so after some really good interaction with a whole bunch of directors and administrators, we came up with 4 ideas that we think are important as we think about this national system that we call cooperative extension. The first one is to help us pursue national initiatives funded by external partners. And so we have this Extension Resource and Partnership Development Committee led by Tom Dobbins that is focused on exactly that. And then secondly, the one that's been successful and is off the ground, I hope you're participating and engaged in the Well-Connected Communities project, catalyzed by Michelle Rogers and funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in partnership with National 4-H Council. So we actually have evidence that we can do this, and it works now, and it's very, very exciting. And then a second point is to strengthen our response to critical national issues. You know, people talk about there's no other entity that is represented across all 3,000 plus counties, parishes, and boroughs across this country. So it's an exciting opportunity that we have to be able to represent nationally ways to deliver on critical national issues. A third point that we all agreed on, at least most of us agreed on probably, was to demonstrate our value locally as well as nationally for Congress and other key stakeholders. And so that's that advocacy piece we'll talk more about later. And then the fourth one, to strengthen Cooperative Extension's position as a key collaborator for NIFA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and other federal partners. And we'll talk more about those in just a minute as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark. Mark, it's your turn.
Okay, as Chuck just indicated, we're looking at a network, a system which is a network of different organizations, and one is the Joint Council of Extension Professionals. The Joint Council of Extension Professionals really elevates the awareness of extension nationally, the extension reputation nationally. It fosters and enhances membership. It fosters leadership and collaboration, provide for professional development and scholarship, and also it advocates for extension profession. In other words, what we're trying to do is continue to maintain it, but definitely create avenues to enhance our extension system. And as we can see, Scott Reed is our ECOP, Extension Council, Extension Committee on Policies liaison to JCEP. Next slide. This slide just gives you acronyms of some of the network forces that are involved, both internal and external partners. For an example, we have the Journal of Extension, we have ECOP, we have APLU, we have the National Coalition of Food and Agricultural Research, NCFAR. So when you look at the broad network of partners, we can't help but to enhance the mission of extension. Next slide. This slide says what is the Cooperative Extension section, and as you will see later, there are 5 sections under the BAA Board of Ag Assembly, and Cooperative Extension is one of those sections. We see the website below. If you tune into that website, you will see more additional information regarding the Cooperative Extension section. Next slide. This map basically indicates the NIFA land grant colleges and universities. In each state, we have a land grant in each state, plus University of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. We have anywhere from 1 to 3 land grant universities. We also have the Native Americans, which is considered the 1994s, which really collaborate and also cooperate with the 1862s and 1890 land grants. As I indicated, I said we have anywhere from 1 to 3 land grant universities. In the state of Alabama, there are 3: Alabama A&M, Auburn University, and Tuskegee. In 2014, in Ohio, Central State University became the 19th 1890 land grant university. Next slide. It
helps if you go off mute. This is the first org chart, and Chuck referenced that there was an org chart, and there are a couple of things I'd just like to point out in this. But there are several boards that are related to what we do in APLU. And each of those is really considered as a professional organization, a professional society, and we're one of those pieces of that in the Cooperative Extension section. And if you look under the Board of Ag Assembly, the Cooperative Extension section is there with the other sections that Mark referenced, and below that is the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy, and we'll get to more of that in just a minute. You'll see that there are a couple of 3 places that are round and blue, and those are special relationships that have been developed over the years. We have a close working relationship with ECOP, the Experiment Station Committee on Organization and Policy, and a few years ago, joint efforts were really made to have joint meetings on occasion, as well as the leadership of the 2 organizations making joint visits to partners and NIFA in Washington, D.C. We also, through the Board on Human Sciences, we have a relationship where we have a liaison that works with us in ECOP. So we make sure that we're connected there, and that's vitally important for many of our family and consumer science programs and related programs. And we also have a connection with the administrative head section in that committee. And that's primarily through our relationship in a joint communications and marketing initiative that includes the administrative heads, ECOP and ECOP. Next slide, please. We're really looking at it at the section as a membership-based organization. We pay our annual assessment to be members of that and have expectations as a result of that. And when you look at a membership-based association, these are the kind of things that are usually considered the priorities of any professional organization like that. And we want to be true to making sure that those kinds of opportunities exist for the members of the section. Next. A couple of years ago, or actually last year at the NEDA meeting, the question was asked, what do directors and administrators want from the section? And there were a number of things that came out. One was a collective voice. They wanted to, you can just keep popping those up there. They wanted to be able to see a return on their investment. And they wanted to be able to provide value back home, to learn, and have really vital and important communication that's relevant to everybody, as well as continuity in how we're approaching things rather than having a start and stop kind of an association. And also it provides access to other partners and other ways of looking at things. Chuck?
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Mark. Any questions or comments at this point from anybody? You're welcome to type in the chat or unmute and speak up. All right, we're going to keep going. So, you know, Ed introduced this idea that the cooperative extension section, the 76 of us, really are a membership-based association or organization. And so we worked with Mark Amaral, who is a consultant that is working with the Northeast region, but is also very interested in how we think about the cooperative extension section as a membership organization. And so he helped us identify some attributes of a successful membership organization. A big one is around effective communication and the idea that we not only talk about things and make decisions and so on, but we really start with that by listening and listening carefully to our constituents, the 76. Clearly, the organization is volunteer-driven. What happens at the national level is volunteer-driven. And Mark's going to talk in a few minutes about the staff, our Extension Director Administrator team that helps us keep cooperative extension and ECOP going forward. We think it's really important, and Mark lifted this up, a clear articulation of the return on investment. And again, we'll check in on those ideas a little bit more here in a minute. We talked earlier about successful leadership transitions. You know, this being an ECOP chair is a big job. I can vouch for that now, being into it 10 months. And we have a really important and vital strategic agenda. You can find that on the ECOP Monday Minute website. But we think it's really important, and that's why we've really engaged with Ed and with Mark to help us think about what does effective leadership transition look like, and how do we keep the momentum going forward on really critical issues and opportunities. It's important that a membership organization prove its value and demonstrate that in a variety of different ways. Many of those, the ideas that Ed shared just a few minutes ago. And that we have a strategic plan, and we do that. We have a strategic agenda that was put together last year. We spent a lot of time engaging with our membership, the 76. We did surveys, we did webinars, we kicked ideas back to the regions. All of that information came together, was compiled into our current strategic agenda. And that agenda really looks out multiple years with an annual plan of work. And so critical process points that we employ to try to be very deliberate about the work that we do. Next slide. So Mark also shared this idea that the most successful membership organizations do these things. The first one is that we represent the entire membership, and membership trusts that they are being represented. And we recognize that trust is a big, big issue and something that we have to just continue to work on every day to make sure everybody knows what we're doing, has the opportunity to know what we're doing, and that their investment is well invested. Open and transparent governance and decision making, and you'll hear more about that in a few minutes when Mark talks about ECOP and how we operate in ECOP and the important critical role that the regional people that come to ECOP have in terms of representing their region and then bringing ECOP back to their region. Next. And then puts personal agendas aside and focuses on what's best for the whole. And you know, we really see this in ECOP. Very few personal agendas. We see people who are committed to advancing cooperative extension nationally and having really important conversations about that. Next slide. Mark.
As Chuck indicated, in order to ensure a smooth, let's say run organization, we have rules operations, and these rules of operations goes from the name, the purpose, the membership, the organization function, through linkage to association boards, up to the Board of Agriculture Assembly. When we look at the section, the ECOP section, we have 5 regions: 1890 North Central, Northeast, Southern, and the Western region. And these regions even act independently within the region, but we come together in order to foster the efforts and opportunities of ECOP. We'll make recommendations to ECOP, to the section, and also a proposal to ECOP as well as the section. We have a meeting, an annual meeting once a year, and usually that meeting is close or in conjunction with APLU. Next slide. We indicated that, okay, we have 5 regions. In those 5 regions, we have 3 members per region that's represented on the ECOP board. So that gives us a board of 15 members, a voting board of 15 members. Each member serves for a 4-year term. There is a membership rotation, and as Chuck indicated early in the presentation, that the chair is a succession of the 3. And thus far, with that organization, it really, in my opinion, has been successful. And as a chair, as Chuck indicated, for 2020, the experience and the learning process, the learning curve, for me, has been wonderful with this network. And we are funded by assessments. Next slide. Next slide. We have, as indicated during the JSAP presentation, we have liaisons, which are ex officios. And also we have appointees, visitors, as well as guests that are participating in meetings and also give us advice.
Thank you, Mark. So one of the things we thought would be important is to give you at least a high-level view of the ECOP budget. This budget is funded by your assessments, and so I think it's important that you know how this budget is organized and how we invest your assessment contributions to ECOP. So income about $612,000. Much of that comes from assessments, but we also generate some revenue from meetings. We try to make our meetings self-sustained, self-funded, so that our assessments really focus on other priorities. The expenses also match the income. The largest expense line is our national office operations. So we have Sandy and Rick Clemmie and Marianne, who work in the national office. This also reflects support from the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, APLU, where our offices are located. And they manage all of our financial transactions at our direction. but also provide human resource support for our employees. So that's a big line. Then we have a number of committees that also have some resources. So the Executive Committee, the ECOP 4-H Leadership Committee, a relatively new committee that is working on our behalf to try to advance 4-H youth development across our country. Awards, these are the Excellence in Extension Awards, as well as the National Diversity Awards. We have a number of strategic priorities that are also important. And you can see the line there for 31,000, the National Impacts Database. And then Angie, the next and I think last line, and this is a big one as well, 133,000 is invested in communications and marketing. And that's a big investment, but a critical one as we work with others, work with experts to figure out how to tell our story in a way that's really convincing and compelling with Congress, and to try to come forward with a story that not only reflects our system, but also the individual impacts and accomplishments of our individual cooperative extension programs across the country. So that's our budget. You get a sense of how we invest your assessment dollars.
Thank you, Chuck, and we'll move on to, we've talked a little bit about our operating guidelines, but we also have principles for operation, and we've identified 6 of those that we feel are pretty important for ECOP to abide by and communicate. And one is to be representative. We want to be a representative body of the cooperative extension section in the system. We want to do things in a very systematic way so that it is very open and transparent. Continuity, and we've talked about that a couple of times, continuity in leadership and in support for our staff. Advocacy, which is really important because we need to speak with one voice for the organization. We also want to be opportunistic and adaptable so that we can take advantage of new and unique things that can happen that are really supportive of the system. And then always we want to be accountable for what we're doing and how the money is being spent and how we're representing the organization. Functioning as a representative body is really important, and there's a couple of pieces to that. We think about being inclusive, we think about being responsive and transparent in that, and each region elects people to be the representatives that have the opportunity and the responsibility to represent the region at the ECOP meetings, as well as come back to the region and communicate with their colleagues and peers about the conversations and the decisions that were made. It provides a means and a framework to have a very open dialogue, an honest dialogue, and have frank conversations about issues, concerns, and opportunities. The group as a representative body negotiated with NEFA to seek funding so that we could get some 1994 participation in our meetings, to really have that reflected in the conversations that we have. And we always welcome to all of our meetings anyone who wants to attend. They're open, and we have 3 face-to-face meetings a year, and we encourage folks who are available to be a part of that. But we have very deliberate agendas and things that we focus on at those meetings. And in addition to just the ECOP board members, so to speak, there are a number of volunteers who staff a variety of committees and other boards on the behalf of ECOP and on behalf of the section. And we look forward to all of you at one point being willing to be a part of that, either on a committee, a board, a liaison, and acting in that fashion. Here's another organizational chart. This one's got a little bit more detail in it than the other ones did, and it shows that the relationship from the section to ECOP, and under ECOP are the committees that have been referenced already, and the importance to be related to external resources and partnerships on the far right there, as well as the ED&A team. And the ED&A team has been already described as those are the professionals, our staff, that are doing the work for all of us on a day-to-day basis, while everyone else in ECOP is in a volunteer role. And those extension and director, the executive director and administrator team are made up of 3 people at APLU offices, Rick Clemmy, Sandy Rubel, and Mary Ann Klein. And then each of the regions has an executive director who devote 25% of their time to being engaged on the national scale in support of all that is done. Also in there is, if you look up towards the upper left, is a box that is highlighted in blue, CARAT. We have a relationship with CARAT as well, and they have a liaison that sits on ECOP with us, and that is Jake Tibbetts. And so there's a lot of communication and participation from ECOP and to the other committees and those committees from the BAA that we're engaged in.
So we do have a question. Thank you, Greg. Please elaborate on how the regions function in the national organization. And, you know, so we're all part of a region of some sort, one of the 5 regions, and that, you know, each of the regions are somewhat different in terms of their organization and their membership and their approach and what they focus on, which is great. I think that gives us a wide array of thoughts and ideas as we try to think about how we move cooperative extension forward, both nationally, but also in our regions. And so the question about assessments, so there is a separate assessment to ECOP. It comes through APLU, Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, to support ECOP. And then we also have all also have separate assessments that goes to our regions. And we have, as Ed just mentioned, an executive director or administrator who helps us manage those regional funds and think about how we invest those to advance cooperative extension in our regions. So that is a separate assessment. Mark?
Next slide. Next slide. On this slide, you could put faces to our team. We have Rick Clemmy, who is our executive director, Sandy Rubel, our assistant director, and just recently Mary Ann Klein, who is our program assistant. When we look at the ED&A team, we have Ron Brown, who's located in the southern region. Ron is the executive director for the southern region. Albert Elsel for the Association of Extension Administrators. He's the 1890 region. We have Lila Hobum, who is the executive director for the Western Extension Directors Association. That's the Western region. Ali Mitchell is the executive director for the Northeast region, and Robin Shepard for the North Central region. Don't forget to join us this fall in October the 1st to the 3rd in Portland, Oregon. This is where we will have our joint meeting with NIDA as well as the CES. This will be our annual business meeting. So take a look at our overall theme. It's science informed decision and policy. Next slide. Oh, as Ed indicated, ECOP also we have advocates. And in the individual that advocates for ECOP really has done a great job, especially as we moved efforts toward the participating with the Farm Bill. I chair the Communication and Marketing Committee, and with Communication and Marketing Committee, we have advocates like Cornerstone, K Global, the CLP BAC, the ECOP Budget and Legislative Committee, calls to action, and we have had quite a few calls to action just recently. We signed on letters of support and also system MOUs. So we, as indicated early, is a network body designed for the purpose of enhancing corporate extension. Next slide.
We have a question about if there's an administrator that serves the 1994s, and what is the CLP BAC?
So I'll take the first one, and then we're going to kick the second one back to Mark.
Okay.
The first one about the 1994s, John Phillips is the administrator for that group. And he does support all three missions of the 1994s, research, extension, and teaching. John's a great guy to work with, very, very energetic, very well connected. And one of the things that you might think about sometime is actually going to their annual meeting. It's called Falcon, First Americans Leadership Conference. I'm not going to get the acronym complete, but you get a sense for that. It's in the fall typically. And so if you have 1994s in your state, tribal colleges in your state, you might consider connecting not only with them, but with their organization. Mark, you want to talk about CLP and BAC?
CLP, Committee on Legislation and Policies, BAC, I'm around the blank right now, Board of, help me on that one.
Budget and Advocacy Committee.
Yeah, Budget and Advocacy Committee. These are committees which we serve on in order to really enhance, as I indicated earlier. One is to enhance our efforts in farm bill opportunities. Yeah, Committee on Legislation and Policy, and also the Board on Advocacy.
Good, thank you, Mark. And you know, the Committee on Legislation and Policy focuses on the Farm Bill. Fred Schluter from Alaska is our rep on that. And Fred has been busy this year. You may have heard about the work that he and others have been doing to try to move the nutrition education program, SNAP-Ed and FNAP, into a required, a mandated budget line, and to put Cooperative Extension in charge, in control of the National Nutrition Education Program. So this is another one of our good questions. Keep them coming. This is another one of our principles for ECOP. We do really strive to be opportunistic and adaptable. And so as we think about that, one of the things that Chris Borboom from NDSU started when he was chair of the program committee was a rapid response model, and really helping us think about how do we respond to key issues such as civil discourse. We really took this up about 3 years, and then this year we focused on opioids. So trying to think about, is there a national response opportunity for those really big critical issues? We also seek new resources to support our program, and we mentioned these two earlier, the Well-Connected Communities, and then this group that Tom Dobbins is heading to help us think about how do we get organized around doing this well. Next. We also pursue new collaborations and partnerships. So very exciting, August 14th and 15th, a small group of us will be meeting with NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service in Fort Collins. The NRCS folks will be represented by their regional conservationists. So that's like the 4 regions in the US. So that's a high-level conversation. In addition to ECOP, the Experiment Station folks, Gary Thompson is chair this year, will also be represented. We have a very interesting conversation going on with the Department of Energy, focused on energy conservation and renewable energy. Robin Shepard is helping us with that conversation. And then FFAR, the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, Sally Rocky, a growing partnership there. And then one that really is just, we've talked about this with the National Academy of Sciences, but it's really popped up again in the last week, and I think a real opportunity. They would like to work with us to have a really robust conversation about the future of cooperative extension and how we can continue to grow our capacity and effectiveness nationally in terms of really being the educational arm of the federal government. And so a very exciting opportunity as we think about what that means. We've also, ECOP, and if you, Laura was at our Guadalajara meeting, so she knows what this is about, but our ECOP agendas have really focused on big ideas. So for example, helping us think about how we add value to the land-grant mission, the overall mission of the land-grant university, how we rethink our federal reporting, plan of work reporting efforts to try to make that a more functional and efficient process. and other things like that that help us really focus on big important issues that help us move cooperative extension forward. So we also think about how we are accountable, and we're absolutely committed to this. So we mentioned the ECOP operating guidelines and the idea that we have open meetings. Some people think we're a secret organization or confidential. No, we're not. Everybody's welcome. We communicate regularly through the ECOP Monday Minute. I hope you're following that and reading it every Monday. It's a really important way that we communicate back with you. And so, for example, after our ECOP meeting in Guadalajara, put together a really good report about what we accomplished there and the kinds of things that we're working on. We share a strategic agenda, and that agenda is developed with input from all of you, and our budget at National Extension and Directors and Administrators meeting. So we're open with that. We try to be responsive to inquiries, concerns, and opportunities from the regions. We think that's very important. And then we work really hard on relationship management with new and existing partners. And there's a bunch of them. Rick Clemmy has done a great job of reconnecting with the National Association of Counties, for example, National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, other organizations like that where we have a common interest, and we want to be a key player and partner with them. So that relationship management with them is a critically important piece that our staff do on our behalf, and of course, we engage whenever we can get to DC. So this is the last slide. You've probably been waiting for this one, but we really do want you to think about how you engage with cooperative extension and our partners to influence success. So the first point is we encourage you to engage at all levels. And I know we're all really busy, right? I mean, I know that, you know that. There's a lot to do as an extension director and administrator. But we would encourage you to carve out some time and follow what ECOP is doing. Get engaged in the conversation. When your ECOP board members come back to the region and talk about what ECOP is doing, ask questions, engage them, and push them to represent your region very effectively. So certainly use the services, products, and offerings. This includes our national meeting, which is an amazing gathering of the leaders of extension nationally. Attending events and engaging. So this year we started these next generation extension learning for leaders conversations, webinars, participated from a number of people. Think about how you can contribute to the conversation. So ask good, hard questions and be part of the conversation, be part of the solution. When it makes sense, something that you might be passionate about, volunteer for a committee or a task force, or when the time is right, volunteer to be an ECOP rep from your region. It's a critically important role, and I can tell you after 8 years, I've learned so much about cooperative extension from extension directors and administrators across this country. And frankly, much of my capacity today is because of that network and that interaction. And then the last thing we would absolutely encourage you to do is provide constructive criticism and solutions to issues or problems. Certainly use your regional ECOP board members to help in this regard. But if you have a question or if you have a concern, maybe it's about your assessment or the way we're doing something or the way we're approaching an issue, we would absolutely appreciate your input, your feedback to help us look at what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. So that's what we wanted to share with you today. I see another question has come in. Explain how the assessments are determined. It took 3 years to figure it out. And Laura, I appreciate what you're saying. So the assessments are based on our Smith-Lever level of funding. And of course, Smith-Lever funding is based on a formula. That's why some people use the term formula funds to describe Smith-Lever. We encourage you to not, now that I've used the word, don't use that word. We would encourage you to use the word capacity funds, because that's really what Smith-Lever funds do, is they help us build capacity to build and to deliver great extension work across this country. But your assessment is based on your Smith-Lever funding level in your your program at your land-grant university. And so we simply take the total amount and ratio it out based on your allocation of Smith Lever and or 1890s funds. Sandy gives us a little additional information. Okay, so capacity funds and competitive grant funding for research and extension, and based on a 3-year rolling average. See, there's information here.
Yes, that's the part that took me a long time to figure out.
So capacity funds account for 60% of the assessment base, competitive 40%. Multi-institution grants are distributed amongst the participating institutions. Good, very helpful. Questions about that? Is that what you were thinking about, Laura?
Yes.
Good. Other comments or questions, you're certainly welcome to unmute and speak up or type in the chat.
I'd just like to encourage folks, if they do have questions, to talk to their regional representatives on ECOP, and or if there are things they don't understand about what's going on or want to interject something, please don't hesitate to do that.
I would like to call attention to introduce Casey Mole. Casey is on with us today. He is the incoming president of JSEP. And Casey, we're just thrilled that you're part of this conversation. JSEP is represented at several of our ECOP meetings, and they also come to National Extension and Directors Administrators Conference. So Casey, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
Other comments or questions? Anything else we can demystify? Well, it looks like we may have reached the end of our time. Thank you all for giving us your time on this Friday afternoon and being part of this conversation. We do sincerely hope it was helpful to you as you think about ECOP and cooperative extension as a national system, and this opportunity really to work together to advance cooperative extension across this country. So thank you all. Everybody have a great weekend.